Sometimes, it's in a simple gesture or an unexpected encounter that we find life's greatest surprises. Today, I want to share a story that might make you believe in the transformative power of love and kindness. Get ready to feel moved and perhaps see life through a new lens. Shall we embark on this journey together? It was a cold evening when Sophie walked through the bustling streets of a big city. The wind bit at her face, and the weight of exhaustion felt heavier on her shoulders than ever before. She had spent the entire day handing out resumes, hoping to land a job that could turn her life around. Despite the discouragement threatening to take over, she refused to give up. All Sophie wanted at that moment was a quiet place to rest and gather her thoughts. Her eyes fell on the imposing facade of a luxurious hotel. The place looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Golden lights illuminated the entrance, sparkling chandeliers glistened through the glass windows, and well-dressed people moved in and out with an air of confidence. For a moment, Sophie hesitated. She felt out of place, but then a daring thought crossed her mind. What if, just for one night, I allowed myself to experience something different, she wondered. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the hotel lobby. It was breathtaking. The marble floors gleamed, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like stars, and the people around her seemed to inhabit a completely different world. Despite feeling small in such grandeur, Sophie gathered her courage and approached the front desk. She asked the receptionist how much a room would cost for the night. The reply came quickly and impersonally. Starting at $500, miss. Sophie's heart sank. $500 was almost all the money she had saved for emergencies. Trying to contain her frustration, she explained her situation, hoping for a more affordable solution. But the receptionist cut her off coldly, stating that the hotel was not a shelter. Before Sophie could apologize and leave, a firm voice echoed behind her. What's going on here? She turned surprised, to see a tall man in an impeccable suit, with a serious expression and eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface. It was Michael, the hotel's owner. He had witnessed the exchange and didn't look pleased with the receptionist's behavior. With a gesture, he silenced the employee and turned to Sophie, asking if she was all right. At first, Sophie hesitated, but the unexpected kindness in Michael's eyes reassured her. She explained her situation honestly, even though it made her feel vulnerable. Michael listened attentively, noting the dignity with which she stood her ground despite the awkwardness of the moment. After a few seconds of silence, he made a decision that would change both of their lives. He offered her a room in the hotel as a courtesy. When Sophie stepped into the room, it felt like she had entered another world. The massive windows revealed a stunning view of the city lights, twinkling like stars among the skyscrapers. The air felt different, almost magical. The room was both welcoming and sophisticated, with elegant furniture, fine curtains, and a delicate fragrance she couldn't place. The bed, perfectly made with fluffy white linens, seemed like an invitation to finally rest. Sitting on the edge of the mattress, Sophie took a deep breath. A wave of relief washed over her as she looked around, marveling at every detail. For the first time in a long while, the weight of recent months felt lighter. She ran her fingers across the soft quilt, trying to absorb the sense of security she hadn't felt in ages. She thought about how fate had brought her there and most of all about Michael, the man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. Michael, on the other hand, couldn't shake the image of Sophie from his mind. The contrast between the hotel's grandeur and her simplicity was the first thing that caught his attention, but there was something more. Sophie's delicate and natural beauty captivated him instantly. It was as if she carried a blend of strength and vulnerability in her demeanor, telling a silent story. Her slightly tousled hair and modest clothing only highlighted her eyes, which reflected both exhaustion and determination. As he watched her explain her situation to the receptionist, Michael noticed how Sophie tried to maintain her composure, even in such an uncomfortable position. The sincerity in her words and her humble yet resolute posture moved him deeply. He knew that many in his position might have ignored or dismissed her, but for him, that was impossible. Something about this young woman stirred not only his attention but also a genuine desire to help her. He didn't offer the room merely because he was drawn to her beauty, though it was undeniable that she had impressed him. Michael's decision was driven by something greater, a gesture of kindness. He knew what it was like to face hardships, to be judged by appearances, and how a single act of compassion could change everything. Offering Sophie a room wasn't just a whim, it was his way of proving that humanity still existed in a world that often seemed cold and calculating. Later that night, a soft knock at the door brought Sophie back to reality. When she opened it, a hotel staff member handed her a small envelope containing a note. The elegant handwriting carried only a few words, but their impact was profound. "I hope you're comfortable. I would be honored to get to know you better over dinner tomorrow. Michael." She read the note several times, trying to understand the gesture. A mix of curiosity and nervous anticipation washed over her. The following evening, Sophie descended wearing a simple dress, but she had taken care to prepare herself thoughtfully. Despite everything, she wanted to feel worthy of the moment. When she arrived at the restaurant, she found Michael waiting for her at a table with a view of the city. He stood as she approached, his warm smile immediately putting her at ease. Michael made no effort to hide his admiration as he greeted her. He invited her to sit, and their conversation flowed naturally. Sophie shared stories of her humble childhood in a small town, the early loss of her parents, and her move to the big city driven by the dream of building a better future. Every word was filled with emotion and honesty, and Michael listened with rare attentiveness, as if nothing else in the world mattered. When it was Michael's turn to share, Sophie was surprised. He revealed that his life hadn't been easy either. Despite his current position, the road to success had been filled with challenges. He spoke about the struggles of starting a business from scratch, the sacrifices he had to make, and the countless times he doubted himself. "People look at me and see what I have today," he said, "but almost no one knows what it took to get here." Sophie was struck by Michael's sincerity. It wasn't common to meet someone so successful who spoke with such humility and empathy. With each exchange of words, she felt more at ease, more connected to him. And Michael in turn, saw something in Sophie he hadn't encountered in a long time, a quiet strength, raw honesty, and a simplicity that reminded him of his own roots. As the evening went on, the atmosphere between them grew increasingly light and intimate. Their eyes met frequently, carrying something unspoken that both were just beginning to recognize. When dinner ended, Sophie left the restaurant with a warm feeling in her heart. It wasn't just Michael's gesture that moved her, but the genuine respect with which he treated her. As improbable as it seemed, something special was beginning to emerge between them. Walking back to her room that night, Sophie felt a whirlwind of emotions she couldn't quite process. The conversation over dinner still echoed in her mind, like a gentle melody she didn't want to forget. Michael had been incredibly kind, showing a genuine interest in her story. He didn't look at her with pity, as so many others had in the past, but with something that felt like admiration. It both surprised and unsettled her. Sitting on the bed, she ran her fingers through her hair, replaying every detail. The way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the room, the subtle yet sincere smiles he offered at each of her responses, and his calm voice, filled with nuances that showed he truly cared about every word she spoke. It wasn't just Michael's impeccable appearance that impressed her, though it was undeniable that he was an incredibly handsome man, but the way he made her feel at ease, despite their differences. That sense of difference, however, was something that weighed on her. Sophie looked at herself in the mirror, adjusting her hair absent-mindedly. How could someone like her, a simple young woman with interrupted dreams, possibly catch the attention of a man like Michael? He embodied everything she had never had: elegance, security, and a life seemingly full of possibilities. She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts aside. "He's just being kind," she murmured to herself. "Men like him don't look at women like me any other way." Yet, even as she told herself this, she couldn't ignore the small spark that had ignited in her heart. It was a faint feeling, almost imperceptible, but it was there, growing with each memory of his smile or the genuine interest he showed in her life. The next morning, Sophie woke up early, determined not to let herself be carried away by what she considered foolish thoughts. Her priority was finding a job, and this hotel room was only a temporary pause, a generous gesture from someone who would likely forget her existence as soon as she left. But as she sat down for breakfast in the hotel restaurant, a movement in the distance caught her attention. It was Michael, entering the room in an impeccable suit, his posture exuding confidence. He seemed to be in conversation with someone, but when his eyes met Sophie's, he paused, smiled warmly, and gave her a look that made her heart flutter. Sophie froze for a moment, surprised that he noticed her amidst so many other people. He approached her with the calm demeanor of someone who never seemed to be in a rush. When he reached the table, he greeted her warmly, asking how her night had been. "I slept very well, thank you," Sophie replied, trying to sound casual, though her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. Michael smiled, leaning in slightly as if to share a secret. "I'm glad to hear that. Rest is important, especially when you're facing challenges like yours." The way he said these things, always with a touch of empathy and without a trace of judgment, made Sophie feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. It was both unsettling and comforting at the same time. The next morning, Sophie went down for breakfast, still trying to organize her thoughts about the previous evening. Dinner with Michael had been unforgettable, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted in her life. She sat at a quiet table, savoring the aroma of her coffee, when to her surprise, she saw Michael walking through the restaurant. As impeccable as ever, his eyes found hers instantly. He walked toward her with the calm confidence that seemed to define him. Sophie's heart raced as she tried to ignore the effect his presence always had on her. When he reached the table, he greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Sophie. I hope you slept well." "Yes, very much, thank you," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Michael hesitated for a moment, as if considering something, before sitting across from her. His eyes met hers, and there was a calm seriousness in his expression that captured Sophie's attention. "Sophie, I've been thinking," he began, his voice low but firm. "I know you're looking for work, and I couldn't help but notice how determined and dedicated you are. So, I was wondering, if you're interested, maybe I can help." Sophie froze, caught off guard by the unexpected proposal. She tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. Michael smiled, the gentle warmth returning to his eyes. "Well, here at the hotel, we're always in need of talented and motivated people. You mentioned you have administrative experience, right? Perhaps you could help out at the front desk or even in one of the administrative departments. Nothing too complicated at first, of course, but it could be a good starting point." Sophie blinked, trying to process what he had just said. She hadn't expected him to be so direct. A job at the hotel? The idea was tempting, almost too good to be true. But something else held her back. Why was he offering this? Surely it couldn't just be kindness, could it? "Michael, I don't know what to say. This is unexpected," she said, struggling to find the right words. "I don't want to seem ungrateful, but why would you do this for me?" He looked at her seriously, his gaze unwavering. "Because I believe in giving opportunities, Sophie. You're striving for something better, and I have an opportunity to offer. Besides," he paused for a moment, his tone softening, "I have to admit, the idea of having you around seems like an excellent addition to my day." His final comment caught Sophie off guard, and she felt her cheeks warm. She didn't know how to respond, but she couldn't ignore the warmth spreading in her chest. Despite her humility, Sophie knew how to recognize sincerity when she saw it. "I accept," she said with a small smile she could barely contain. "I don't know if I'm all that you think I am, but I promise to do my best." Michael smiled again, clearly pleased with her response. "I'm sure you'll do great. I'll pass the details to the manager, and he can guide you through everything. Welcome to the team, Sophie." That same week, Sophie started working at the hotel. She was introduced to the other staff members and quickly realized that Michael had arranged everything to ensure she felt comfortable. At first, she focused on simple tasks at the front desk, assisting guests and organizing documents. Though the environment was new to her, Sophie was determined to prove herself capable. Working at the hotel gave Sophie more than just financial stability. It brought her a renewed sense of self-worth. She began to believe that perhaps she was more capable than she had ever imagined. And every interaction with Michael reinforced that belief. He treated her with respect, attention, and above all, a genuine kindness she hadn't encountered in many people. For Michael, having Sophie around was an unexpected gift. He knew that offering her the job had been, in part, a way to help her, but he couldn't deny that he wanted her close. Her presence brightened his days in ways he couldn't explain. Sophie wasn't just an employee, nor was she simply a beautiful woman who had crossed his path. She was a quiet force, someone who made him want to be better. The two began sharing small moments amid their daily responsibilities, a smile here, a glance there. It was subtle, yet powerful. A connection that grew slowly, but with undeniable intensity. For Sophie, each day by Michael's side seemed to reaffirm something she was still afraid to admit to herself. She was beginning to fall in love. Months passed since Sophie began working at the hotel, and the connection between her and Michael became impossible to ignore. What had started as an act of kindness on his part had evolved into something much deeper. Both knew they were experiencing something special, but neither had yet found the courage to express their feelings. One evening, Michael invited Sophie to a private dinner on the hotel's rooftop. When she arrived, she was amazed by the setting, candles, flowers, and a breathtaking view of the city lights. Michael greeted her with a warm smile, but there was something different in his eyes, a depth that made her heart race. As they talked, Michael finally took Sophie's hand and spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "Sophie, from the moment I saw you, you changed my life. I fell in love with your strength, your honesty, and your simplicity. I want to share my future with you because with you, everything makes sense." Sophie, overwhelmed with emotion, responded with tears in her eyes. "Michael, I love you too. I never imagined someone like you could see something in me, but you've made me believe I deserve more. I want to be by your side, always." Michael kissed her tenderly, and in that moment, all doubts melted away. They knew they were exactly where they were meant to be, together. After that night, Michael and Sophie decided to live as partners, both in life and at work. Together, they faced challenges and grew, transforming the hotel into a symbol of their love and determination. Months later, they celebrated their union in an intimate ceremony in the hotel gardens, surrounded by friends and family. Over time, Sophie and Michael built not just a solid relationship but a life filled with purpose and passion. They proved that, even amidst differences, true love can find its way, changing two lives forever. This story reminds us that true love doesn't care about differences, backgrounds, or circumstances. It is born from the genuine connection between two souls meeting at the right time. Sometimes, a single act of kindness can change not only the life of the one who receives it but also the one who offers it. In the end, it is respect, empathy, and the courage to believe in the unexpected that create the deepest and most lasting bonds. After all, love has the power to transform lives and show that together, we can overcome any barrier. If this story touched your heart and made you believe that love can appear in the most unexpected moments, don't forget to share it with someone special. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and heartfelt stories, and leave your comment below. What lesson resonated with you the most? Let's keep spreading messages of hope and love together.